you finished essay 2. You did amazing. Whew. And on to essay 3. Let's look at some of the new differences I'm introducing because this is a new type of essay. We are now moving on to essay 3. And as you look at the instructions, I want you to notice a few key differences. With essay 3, we are switching to a new type of thesis. Our thesis is now going to be a solution. Essays 1 and 2 were positional essays, meaning you were stating your position on a subject. For example, your position, whether we self-segregate or if society segregates us in essay 1. Essay 2 was your position, is college the best option, or, if college is the best option, what kind of college? Now we are moving into solutions. Now, obviously, you'll notice that both essay 3 and essay 4 are coming out of chapter 18. And yes, they are both solution essays. But where they differ is that essay 3 comes from 3 of the first 4 readings in chapter 18. So instead of needing to respond to 2 essays, you now need to respond to 3. The 4 essays from the first 4 essays in chapter 18 are Nicholas Carr's Is Google Making Us Stupid? Clive Thompson's Smarter Than You Think, How Technology is Changing Our Minds for the Better. So those 2 essays obviously contrast each other. So one would be good for your reasons and refutations, and the other one would be good for your objections. Also, we have Michaela Cullingham's Does Texting Affect Writing, which actually looks at the belief that many people used to have that, if people keep doing text speak the way they text to each other, it's going to make its way into our essays, which is pretty funny. I don't see that happening, but it also, like Clive Thompson's essay, is a good contrast to Is Google Making Us Stupid? And many people pair those 3 essays together, but also the fun essay, right? Because we've been doing laughing Snapchat videos with Professor Haney all semester. Jenna Wortham's How I Learned to Love Snapchat. You don't have to exclude any of these essays. You can use all 4 of them. You just need to respond to a minimum of 3. And I find a lot of people actually end up going to use I Learned to Love Snapchat. Please don't risk losing points by quoting from the wrong essays. For essay 3, we're only using 3 essays, and for essay 4, we're only using these. You cannot use any of these essays in essay 3. If you do, you can't use them at all in essay 4 in any way, even if it's a different quote. You cannot use any of essay 4 articles for essay 3, and you cannot use any of essay 3 articles for essay 4. So only these 3 for essay 3. The structure that your thesis is going to come into is one statement of one thing that we can do to solve a problem happening with technology. And ways to make sure you don't lose points is you have one thesis, one statement of this is one thing we should do to help solve the problem with technology, and then 4 reasons why we should do this one thing. A lot of students lose points because when they get to their actual essay, what they do is state 5 theses, 5 things we should do to fix the problem. And of course, you don't get full credit for that. We look at the structure of our essay. The introduction is still the same, a hook, 3 backgrounds, your thesis, what we can do to solve the problem, and then your 4 reasons, right? These can either be 4 outcomes of that thesis. If we make this one change, here are 4 things that will happen, or 4 reasons why we should implement this change. And then, of course, acknowledge an objection. An objection is something someone else believes where they disagree with you. But also there's a new structure that you can use instead. And instead of having an objection, you acknowledge an alternative solution. So maybe some people disagree with my solution and they believe we can use this alternative solution. Here's another way to solve the problem. And then your refutation would be, of course, stating why the original solution is better. So obviously your thesis wants to be the one you agree with the most. I do want to take a brief moment to talk about backgrounds. Notice with backgrounds, I give you 3 suggestions for background topics in definition, description, and history. I just wanted to say that those are my suggestions. You can do any 3 backgrounds that you want. I've seen students do 3 definitions. I've seen students do 3 descriptions. I've seen students do 3 different parts of history. I've seen 3 different definitions of the problem. I've seen 2 definitions of the problem and 1 definition of the solution. A lot of students do that. They define what the solution is. On body paragraphs, you always want to start with your topic sentence so that your reader's not trying to guess, like, let me look back at the introduction. What is the point this topic should be? You want your essays to be as easy to read as possible, both because, geez, you think this thing took you a long time to write. I have to grade the whole class of them, and I only get a few days to grade. You got a whole week to write it. And think of yourself at 2 o'clock in the morning the night before an essay is due when you're reading through some other essays online. You don't want to be trying to figure out what they're saying. You just want them to spill it. Just tell me what I need to know. Can I use this essay for what I'm writing or not? And if not, you just toss it and go to the next one. You don't need to be looking at it, trying to figure out what it's trying to point out to you. So your body paragraph should always start with a topic sentence, just for ease of use for your reader, me, and then introduce the quote with the author of the article and the title of the article or the book, whether it's online or not, and put your quote with the page number, and then explain what the quote means. In your body paragraphs dealing with objections or the alternative solution, you don't want to lose points by giving the topic, acknowledging where someone disagrees with you, and then having a quote that you're using to prove why someone is wrong. Your quote should be something you're acknowledging from someone who disagrees with you. So, for example, you might pair is Google making us stupid with smarter than you think, and having a quote acknowledging the objection to your thesis or your reasons or the alternative solution. Have the quote from the article, and then you explain what the quote means or how the quote proves the topic. You don't refute the objection here, you refute the objection here and state why they're wrong. Okay, just so you don't lose points. Some other areas of concern I have is with quoting and correct MLA in paragraph quoting. For example, when you have a quote that has both dialogue or a quote within a quote, you want to use double and single quotes. For example, in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, quote, the creature said, single quote, I expected this reception, single quote, double quote, and then in parentheses, Shelley, the page number, close quote, and period. You don't need to put a PG or a pound sign or the word page, right? And notice also you don't need any of punctuation in here, right? There's no period or comma, right? Also, you don't need to put like the full first and last name in the parentheses. Only the last name needs to appear here. And incidentally, only the last name needs to appear here. You don't need the first and last name. For a regular quote, meaning there's no quote within a quote, it's just Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the creature says, comma, quote, I expected this reception, close quote. Notice there's no period or comma or punctuation here. Parentheses, the last name, and the page number. And notice the period goes outside of the parentheses. You don't need any punctuation within the parentheses. And I've noticed a lot of people doing really weird things, like they'll put the author's name, for example, Rose, and then in the parentheses put Graf. You don't need to do that. Graf, while he is the author of the book, unless you're quoting from an introductory part to a chapter where it is Graf's writing, what's in the parentheses is the author of the article. A lot of you are also adding weird extra end punctuation with unnecessary parenthetical information like URLs. You don't need to type those out. Those don't need to go in an in-paragraph citation. The only place you need the URL is in your Works Cited page if you're doing one, and the only essay I require it for is essay 5, your research paper. And then, of course, the URL goes in the Works Cited page after the author title and publication information, right? You don't need the URL in place of any of that. You don't need to waste your time with unnecessary typing. So please look carefully at my comments from Essay 2 so that you don't make the same mistakes in Essay 3, because I don't want to take points away for an incorrect citation. Just a general reminder, because a lot of people are losing points for this. Essay 3's Draft 1 is due today. Like Essay 1 and 2, it only has to be 5 paragraphs total, any 5. You do need to submit a rough draft 5 paragraphs here to get points for the self-review here. Notice the draft itself is worth 0 points, so if you only turn in a draft, you don't get points. The self-review is what's worth points, right? That's 10 points. However, you do need to submit a draft. If you just put a self-review, excuse me, which is just basically a bunch of yeses and nos with no draft, I'm not going to give you points. You need to put the draft here and the self-review here. Also notice with the self-review, you are going to go through, and after you submit your draft, you're going to copy all these questions and then paste it into your reply. So you will just copy this. I do control copy because I'm lazy on a laptop. And then you'll go up here to submit assignment, and you can do text entry or a file, right? You can copy and paste it into Word, or you can just paste it here. And I'm not in the market of, giving any of you finger strain from typing too much. Really, when you're in class with me, we would do this in class. And what I just do is post the questions on the board, and students number their pages 1 through whatever it is. Like if they only did the first 5 paragraphs, they number it 1 through, it would be 34. And then they just answer the questions. They don't even write the questions down. And then they just give it to me. I glance at it to make sure it's not particle physics, and give them their points and give them the self-review back so they can look at where they put no and make corrections. So like they would just put 1, and then, for example, they would put the phrase a question, like literally 1, a question. So you don't really need to, go through all of this and do everything. I have a really clever student who just does this thing where they kind of put like anecdote and they go bold, but, you literally just have to have it numbered 1 through like 30 something, whatever the paragraphs you wrote. And then, history, for example, of Google, stuff like that. And then down here, they just literally, students highlight and, for example, bold the yeses or nos, And this is more for you than me. It's so that you know what you've covered. And then when you're done, obviously just click Submit Assignment. And a quick point about the peer review. When you do the peer review, just as a reminder, Essay 3's second draft is 8 paragraphs total. So if you only did 5 paragraphs for Essay 3 Draft 1, you're just doing 3 more. The essay is due by 5 p.m. And then I assign the peer review at 6 p.m. And your answers to the peer review questions need to be submitted by 11:59. And there is also the journal. If you don't respond to the peer review questions, just like the self-review, the draft is not worth points. It's the review that is worth points. And you do the peer review. What you're going to be doing after you submit your draft is answering these questions. And what most of my students are doing is just going through and copying them and pasting them into the student comments section and just answering the questions. You don't get points for saying things like, oh, this was a great essay, it was flowing well, I liked it, I agreed with this, I didn't disagree with that. You don't get points for those things. You get points for telling me if the student has the right topic, what is their hook, what are their backgrounds. That's what you get points for. This looks really weird because, of course, it's my teacher version, but they just go into the comment and paste the review questions and answer it yes and no, and then, click save. Now, just a quick comment on the journal. I'm actually really surprised how many students don't do it. It's literally here points, like just respond to it and you get points. It's literally 4 questions. And what most of my students do, as I mentioned, is they just go through and copy it and paste it into the submit assignment and answer the questions, right? As always, I'm not really interested in giving you carpal tunnel syndrome. Just the response total for the 4 questions is 200 words. So about 50 words or 2 lines of text. I think it's about 2 lines of text for each question. So, an insurmountable obstacle, and history you've learned. These, notice, are kind of geared towards writing your essay, right? Your background, your reasons and support, right? An obstacle you're having, maybe personal prejudice or details that run counter to your beliefs. These are things that you can acknowledge as objections, right? Where someone disagrees with you, and then you refute those. So notice this is just to kind of help you write your essay, and you can do the journal whether or not you've done a self or a peer review. And then anything you're struggling with, and then you just click submit, and it's here points. Also, don't forget to take a look at the example of an A paper from Essay 3 from a prior semester. To do that, you want to click on it, and you can look at it here and just see the actual essay the student wrote the way I saw it before I graded it. Or if you want, you can download it onto your computer and it will show you how I graded it. You'll see, hook, background 1, 2, and 3, thesis, reasons 1, 2, 3, and 4, objection and refutation, the points for the body paragraphs, topic, explanation, right? She lost 2 points here for not having a quote and 2 points here for not having a quote. Lost a half a point here for not having the author and title of the article, just putting graph. But you can see all of the punctuation here. All of my points when they were assigned, and where she lost points. For example, the I with the 1/2 means did not use the author and or title, like, incorrectly put graph here when graph did not write the article she's quoting from. Oh, that's right, you can't see the comments. But you can see how I graded it. So it's always a good thing to take a peek at.